On today's Cowboys Report, we're taking a look at the future of Mike McCarthy. The Cowboys have 2 games left. He is out of a contract after this year, not under contract anymore. And his team has fought hard. They've been competitive. They've won some games. And they've also officially missed the playoffs. So with the Cowboys and Jerry Jones not committing either way to McCarthy, it's time to break down some of the pros and cons and what might happen and what you guys want too. And I think your answer to this question does kind of lay out what you think the Cowboys should do with Mike McCarthy. Rank him among all NFL head coaches. And if your number's not top 10, kind of feels like you want to move on from him. But let me know in the comments section of today's show. Rank Mike McCarthy among head coaches. Let's talk pros and cons here. Pros in green, cons in red, right? First up, the Cowboys have not quit. And I will give McCarthy all the credit in the world for this. This is a mark of a NFL head coach who doesn't get fired midseason. His teams have fought. They have nothing to play for. They are out of the playoff race. Everyone would have understood if after the Eagles and Texans games, the Cowboys never recovered and they lost a bunch of games and finished with a clear-cut top 10 pick. That wouldn't have been a surprise to everyone. That is not what has happened. In the past 5 games, the Cowboys are, despite being a bit of a silly goose team, not that far away from winning a bunch of football games. Now, they've been a bit beneficial to go 3-1 in one-score games. They've almost blown games against the Commanders and Bucks. They blew one against the Bengals, but it all kind of evens out in the end. The Cowboys have fought. They've been competitive. They have not quit. And that is a testament to what Mike McCarthy has done. He's done a good job of that. However, they haven't quit is not the standard. That is not the goal you are searching for every single year. Our players play hard. That's the minimum. That is the baseline. You know, Mike made the comment he would quit if he didn't think the players believed in him. Yeah, because he'd be fired. Having your players fight for you, believe you, do their jobs is the minimum when it comes to being head coach. Most NFL teams don't quit on their coach. Cowboys didn't quit on Garrett. When they do quit, you get fired midseason because that is unacceptable. That is the one thing you can't ever have as a head coach. They fought hard. They competed. They believed is not a defining reason to keep someone as your head coach. You do not get a raise from your boss because you didn't assault them. This is the baseline. You don't retain somebody just because the players believe in them. There's a lot more that goes into it. It means you're not a bottom 2 NFL head coach, but not being the worst isn't a reason to be retained in the end. So will the Cowboys keep Mike McCarthy as head coach? Y for yes, N for no. Let me know at the pinned comment of today's show, Y or N. Next up is the Cowboys have won games under Mike McCarthy. They have. And in most places, 3 straight 12-5 seasons would get you an extension. And we'll see how the rest of the year wraps up for the Cowboys. They got a chance to make some moves here down the stretch and maybe finish above 500. I have my doubts on that front with the Eagles game still to come. But 12-5 is good stuff. Now, as part of kind of the negative flip side here, you went 1-3 in the playoffs, and that's a big factor in it, which is part of the stuff we'll talk about more in depth here. But a big reason why you've won games this year, especially down the stretch, it is not because of the offense. It is because of the defense. Look at some of the advanced stats here. Since Week 10, the Cowboys defense, and this includes some losses, have played like a top 10 unit. First in drop back EPA play. The success rate is lower because they're forcing turnovers again. The running success rate, they've allowed some scrambles by quarterbacks that have killed them. Since Week 12, this heater they've been on, this is a top 6 defense in EPA per play. This defense has woken up again. They had some injuries. They were down Micah Parsons. There was the natural adjustment period to Mike Zimmer's defensive changes and Zimmer adjusting to the players. And the Cowboys have turned into a top 10 defense once again. That is the single biggest reason, along maybe with Brandon Aubrey, that they've won games. It's not because of the offense. This offense with Cooper Rush at the helm overall has been a bottom 3 unit. They're 30th in EPA per play, 22nd in success rate. They've run the ball better. That certainly seems to matter. The drop back EPA per play is not very good. Now, to be fair, that includes some kind of ugly performances against the Eagles and Texans. Since week 12, they've been right about league average. They've run the ball better. They've cut down on some of the turnovers and the mistakes. But if you're assigning credit of order here from a coaching staff perspective, head coach gets credit too, but Mike's responsible for the offense in the end. Zim's responsible for the defense in the end. And it is the defense that's done a better job. That probably shouldn't be overlooked. Because if this defense was playing like they were earlier this season, they weren't going to win any of these games. They would have lost them all. Maybe they win 1 or 2 at most. The defense is a big reason why they've been better. How much credit for that does McCarthy get versus Zimmer? Now, today's show is made possible by Prize Picks. It's the best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your cash. Run your game all season long on Prize Picks, America's #1 daily fantasy sports app. Make your holidays bigger and brighter with Prize Picks. This holiday season, they're giving away 2 free picks in December, and they're giving away $30+ million in rewards during Picksmas. My pro football Prize Picks slate, consulting with my boy Jack Lotteray, remains on a heater. Rico Dowdle, more than rushing yards. Jared Goff, more than passing yards. Hunter Henry, more than receiving yards. Download the Prize Picks app today over at prizepicks.com/CLNS and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. It's prizepicks.com/CLNS. Use code CLNS for the $50 instantly, win or lose, after you play your first $5 lineup. I've seen this refrain before, too. The next head coach could be worse. You might not get a good head coach as Mike McCarthy. And look, that could be true. And the Cowboys in particular seem to want experience. They have made comments. They don't want to train a guy on the job, blah, blah, blah. They want a head coach with experience. Well, outside of Mike McCarthy, with Bill Belichick now in North Carolina, and I didn't want to do the gang back together stuff anyway, here's some notable experienced head coach options. Mike Vrabel, Pete Carroll, Brian Flores, Cliff Kingsbury, Robert Saleh, Vance Joseph, Matt Nagy, Arthur Smith, Steve Spagnuolo, Ron Rivera. And I would bet they interview Ron Rivera, by the way, because they got connections there. Of these options, and I don't know if Pete Carroll even wants to coach anymore, so asterisk him. How many of these guys are better than Mike McCarthy? The only guy I think you could maybe really argue for is Mike Vrabel. And then you're trying to make sure you nail the offensive coordinator hire. Like, Cliff failed at 2 different head coaching jobs. Flores is a great defensive mind. Same with Robert Saleh, but they've missed on OCs repeatedly. Vance Joseph and Matt Nagy want to make me throw up. Arthur Smith is not a head coach. We've seen that, but he's a fine play caller, I guess. I think Steve Spagnuolo is this generation's Wade Phillips, just a great defensive mind, not head coach. Ron Rivera is a disaster class. Like, the experienced head coach options are not great out there. Kind of Vrabel or bust, frankly. So who do you want as the Cowboys head coach in 2025? A viable answer here is indeed McCarthy, by the way. But let me know in the comments section of today's show. Now, while the head coach could be worse, it can be better. I'm kind of blown away over the amount of, well, who are we going to find that's better comments. You have to try. Look around the NFL, and then maybe you can mix in like a Sean McDermott on this list of like the general consensus top 10 head coaches. It's Andy Reid, it's Sean McVay, it's Sean Payton, it's John Harbaugh, Jim Harbaugh, Shanahan, Dan Campbell, Mike Tomlin, Matt LaFleur, Kevin O'Connell. Those coaches, a lot of them were unknowns. Andy Reid came over from Philadelphia, never won a Super Bowl. Sean McVay was an unknown. Sean Payton, one with the Saints, was kind of in the Mike McCarthy bucket of like, those guys weren't that different from their resumes. John Harbaugh was a special teams coach. Jim Harbaugh made it to the Super Bowl, but didn't win one in San Francisco. Shanahan was a first-time head coach. Dan Campbell, Mike Tomlin, Matt LaFleur, Kevin O'Connell. You have to try. If this idea that, oh, you can't find anyone better, that's just giving up. You can find a better head coach if your process is good. And if you're worried about the process, that's fine. But here's my main mindset. If you didn't want Mike McCarthy back after last season, which I get, has anything actually changed this season? This season is a failure. You cannot say, oh, you won some games late and made a successful season. We can't really use the injuries as an excuse. They weren't winning games when they were injured or when they were healthier, so to speak, at least on offense. I guess they got healthier on defense. But that's not really why they're losing games, because their defense wasn't ready yet and the offense wasn't playing well. The issue with Mike McCarthy in Dallas was the lack of the top-end wins that matter, the playoff wins, the success, the bar being high. He was never clearing and getting to that bar. It was never, oh, we aren't winning games, period. They did that in previous years with more success, and they have done it this year with a little bit less success. So if you wanted Mike gone, and now you're changing your mind, I think you're actually just caught up in recency bias, because nothing has changed tangibly with the way this team has played. The Bucs may or may not be a playoff team this year. Who knows? You upset the Commanders. Great. You beat the Steelers with Dak. Awesome. You lost against a bunch of the other playoff teams you faced. That's the same issue we've had in years past, right? Now, win or lose, and keep Mike or fire Mike, or I guess invite Mike not to return potentially, we will be live for every single Cowboys game. We'll have videos for you all throughout the offseason. Hit that sub button right now. One more bonus thing I want to mention. Mike McCarthy's a free agent. Does he want to come back? This should probably be mentioned, because I do think Mike is a top 32 NFL head coach. And I think he's better than Robert Saleh. I think he's better than Dennis Allen. I think he's better than Matt Eberflus. Does that mean those guys those teams would hire him over their current guy or a different player? Coach, I don't know. Maybe not. But this is a possibility of the outcomes. That Mike says, I don't want to deal with the Jones boys anymore. Because all the criticism that we give the Jones boys, I think Mike's got some valid criticisms there too. There is a possibility that Mike goes, I'm going to go interview elsewhere, or even just as leverage, which is borderline unheard of in the recent NFL. But that's where you're at, because he's out of a contract. And I do think, by the way, things might have been different if Mike had another year or two on his deal. If he had been extended, he wouldn't have gone anywhere. He'd be back. If he had 2 years left on his deal, they'd chalk it up to injuries. They'd give him the excuse. They'd give him more time. If he had 1 year left, might have been a run at back season like they just had. There's 0 years left. Makes it a little bit interesting with intrigue to wrap up the season.